To everyone at home listening or watching us, welcome to Action with a podcast presented by A Star Financial Solutions, presented by New Laxmi Jewelers, Taptap Send, and also supported by Nepal Authentic Dining and Nepali Music Festival UK 2022. I am Lex Thimbu, and today I have the very wonderful Sristi from Taptap Send with us. Welcome, Sristi.
Hi, thank you for
How
having me.
Oh my God, thank you so much for coming. I mean, I think only we know the turmoil that we are facing today.
Honestly, it's been crazy.
To our listeners, तपाईँहरू कहाँ हुनुहुन्छ जहाँबाट सुनिरहेको हुनुहुन्छ भने पनि आज चाहिँ युकेमा धेरै धेरै चिसो छ real strikes, every other strike जे सोचे पनि होइन everything is happening today.
Everything's gone wrong today.
and आज हामी हाम्रो normal setting studio भन्दा पनि अलिकति अन्तै ठाउँमा आएको कारणले अलिकति तपाईँहरूले हेरिराख्नु भएको छ भने भिन्नता त देख्नु नै हुन्छ साउन्ड पनि अलिकति डिफ्रेन्ट हुनसक्छ होला म भन्दा पनि धेरै हाम्रो लिसनर्सहरूले चाहिँ यो चाहिँ टिप्नु हुँदो रहेछ कि
Right.
and they'll always say आजको यसपालिको अडियो किन अलिकति तलमाथि थियो खालको हुन्छ है so but nonetheless I think we have a good conversation ahead and thank you so much for making time as well to join us.
त्यसो भए हाम्रो लिसनर्स चाहिँ धेरै अटेन्टिभ हुनुहुन्छ
हुनुहुँदो रहेछ क्या किनभने आई वाज जस्ट थिङ्किङ कहिले काहीँ क्या अब ओके आज हाम्रो हेडफोन्स छैन क्या होइन नर्मली हाम्रो हेडफोन्स लाउँछौँ नि त अनि कसैले लेख्नुहुन्छ क्या त्यो हेडफोन्सको लाउनु जरुरी चाहिँ के छ खालको एन्ड टु बी अनेस्ट खास गरी त्यस्तो साह्रो चाहिँ छैन होइन किन हामी त गफ मात्र गर्ने हो नि त तर के हुन्छ भने चाहिँ कहिले काहीँ हेडफोन्स लाउँदाखेरि इट मेक्स यु फिल मोर लाइक aware and conscious of what you're saying because you're really zoned in. But then कति मान्छेलाई चाहिँ त्यसले चाहिँ it makes them feel nervous. But I think it's good as I mean, अब एउटा यो conversation को लागि आएको हो होइन. But Sristi, enough about that. हाम्रो सुनिराख्नु भएको हेरिराख्नु भएको listenersहरूलाई if you could introduce yourself, give us a short brief introduction.
So I'm Sristi Gurung. I'm the growth lead for Nepal at Taptap Send. So Taptap Send हजुरले भनिसक्नुभयो हजुरहरूको लिसनर्सलाई पहिला पनि ट्यापट्याप सेन्ड चाहिँ एउटा इन्टरनेसनल मनी ट्रान्सफर एप हो जसले चाहिँ ओभर यु क्यान सेन्ड मनी टु ओभर 30 डिफ्रेन्ट कन्ट्रिज फ्रम युएस युके र युरोप इन्क्लुडिङ नेपाल होइन सो म चाहिँ एउटा ग्रोथ लिडको काम गर्छु त्यो भनेको चाहिँ अब सिम्पली भन्नुपर्दाखेरि चाहिँ जस्तै कि बिफोर अगस्ट अफ 2020 खासै हाम्रो नेपाली कम्युनिटीमा युकेमा युरोपमा कसैलाई ट्यापट्याप सेन्डको बारेमा थाहा थिएन होइन सो मेरो काम चाहिँ के हो भने यो एपलाई चाहिँ हाम्रो मार्केटमा इन्ट्रोड्युस गराउने होइन इन्ट्रोड्युस गराउँदाखेरि चाहिँ के गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ इफेक्टिभ स्ट्राटेजी होला के गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ मान्छेहरूले रिस्पोन्ड गर्नुहुन्छ होला भनेर त्यसको बारेमा अलिकति स्ट्राटेजीहरू निकाल्ने अनि त्यही अनुसार इम्प्लिमेन्ट गर्ने अनि इभेन्चुली अभियसली हाम्रो गोल भनेको चाहिँ उहाँहरूले हाम्रो एप अडप्ट गर्ने चलाउने चाहिँ अफकोर्स हाम्रो लागि बिजनेसको लागि अब त्यो नै हुन्छ होइन एन्ड गोल भनेको चाहिँ सो त्यसमा चाहिँ म काम गर्दैछु अहिले या सो द्याट्स इसेन्सियली माई रोल एट ट्यापट्याप सेन्ड अनि ट्यापट्याप सेन्ड मैले भने जस्तै चाहिँ एउटा एप हो होइन माइक्रो लेभलमा चाहिँ हामीले के गर्छौँ भने इन्डिभिजुअल्सहरूलाई चाहिँ हामीले नेपाल पैसा पठाउँदाखेरि चाहिँ एउटा सस्तो फास्ट फेयर अनि कन्भिनियन्ट वेमा चाहिँ नेपाल पैसा पठाउने एउटा मिडियम दिन्छौँ होइन म्याक्रो लेभलमा चाहिँ हामीले के गर्दैछौँ भने अब अलिकति स्ट्रङ्गर इकोनोमीबाट लो इन्कम इकोनोमी लाइक नेपालमा चाहिँ हामीले मिलियन्स अफ डलर्स चाहिँ ट्रान्सफर गरिरहेको छौँ होइन एभ्री सिङ्गल डे सो म्याक्रो लेभलमा चाहिँ हामीले अब रेमिटेन्स इन्डस्ट्रीमा भित्र चाहिँ काम गरिरहेको छौँ अनि नेपाल जस्तो ठाउँलाई चाहिँ रेमिटेन्स भनेको एउटा धेरै इम्पोर्टेन्ट चिज हो किनभने हाम्रो जिडिपी हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ 2020मा चाहिँ नियरली 25% चाहिँ जिडिपी कन्ट्रिब्युसन चाहिँ हाम्रो रेमिटेन्सबाट भएको थियो होइन सो ट्यापट्याप सेन्डले चाहिँ म्याक्रो लेभलमा चाहिँ त्यो जुन नेपालको इकोनोमी छ त्यसलाई मद्दत गरिरहेको छ अनि माइक्रो लेभलमा चाहिँ इन्डिभिजुअल नेपालीजहरूलाई चाहिँ पैसा पठाउँदाखेरि चाहिँ मद्दत गरिरहेको छ
That's incredible. Thank you so much Taptap Send को बारेमा त्यो एउटा र तपाईको पनि इन्ट्रोडक्सन दिनुभएकोमा हैन अगस्त 2020 देखि चाहिँ ट्यापट्यापको you know I think you mentioned August 2020 भन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ नेपालमा त्यस्तो कनेक्सन थिएन हैन
हजुर
अनि तर ट्यापट्याप was already there
हजुर
सर्भिङ अदर मार्केट्सहरू सो क्यान यु ब्रिफली होइन छोटकरीमा अब कति मान्छेलाई चाहिँ अब सोच उहाँहरूलाई पनि हुन्छ ट्यापट्याप चाहिँ के हो यो नेपालीहरूको कम्पनी हो कि होइन को रहेछ ट्यापट्यापको ठुलो मान्छे हामी पनि बोल्न सकिन्छ कि भन्ने हाम्रो कम्युनिटी चाहिँ यहाँ पनि त्यो त्यसमा रुटेड छ बोल्नु पायो भने अझै विश्वास पो हुन्थ्यो कि भन्ने खालको हुन्छ होइन सो अलिकति बताइदिनु सक्नुहुन्छ ट्यापट्यापको लाइक सुरुको ब्रिफ हिस्ट्री या कसरी चाहिँ सुरु भयो भन्नेको बारेमा
So Taptap Send has been around since 2018 होइन सो प्रिभियसली चाहिँ हामीले सुरु गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अफ्रिकन कन्ट्रिजहरूलाई सर्भ गरिरहेको थियो होइन स्पेसिफिकली हाम्रो फ्राङ्कोफोन अफ्रिकन कन्ट्रिजहरू सो त्यो कन्ट्रिजहरूमा चाहिँ हामीले के देखिरहेको थियौँ भने खासै हाम्रो लार्जर जुन कम्पनीजहरू हुनुहुन्छ उहाँहरूले चाहिँ खासै अटेन्सन दिइराख्नु भएको थिएन सर्भ गरिराख्नु भएको थिएन होइन सो त्यो कन्ट्रिजहरूलाई चाहिँ एउटा प्लेटफर्म दिनको लागि होइन इजिली पैसा पठाउनको लागि अनि त्यो पनि फ्री वेमा पैसा पठाउनको लागि चाहिँ एउटा प्लेटफर्म बिल्ड गरेको थियो एज वी ग्रु वी स कि साउथ एसियन कन्ट्रिजहरूमा पनि त्यो निड छ होइन अनि नेपालमा पनि एउटा निड छ अनि हाम्रो अरू कम्पनीजहरूले चाहिँ खासै नेपाल स्पेसिफिक केही गरेको छैन नेपाललाई नेपाली मार्केटलाई बुझ्न खोजेर राम्ररी बुझ्न खोजेर के हो त मार्केट अनि नेपाली कम्युनिटीलाई के चाहिरहेछ बुझ्न खोज्नु भएको थिएन होइन सो ट्यापट्याप सेन्ड चाहिँ कसरी डिफ्रेन्ट छ भने हामी चाहिँ अलिकति लोकलाइज्ड अप्रोच लिइरहेछौँ होइन जस्तै कि आज म हजुरको पडकास्टमा अब यो हाम्रो सबै लिसनर्स भनेको नै नेपाली नै हो होइन सो हामीले चाहिँ के गर्न ट्राई गरिरहेको छौँ ट्यापट्याप सेन्डमा भनेको भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ to really try and understand the community that we're serving, I know. I really believe that unless you understand the community, you cannot provide the service that they need. So that's what we're trying to do. And so we're talking, हामीले सुरुदेखि नै August 2020 देखि नै नेपाली कम्युनिटीसँग मिलेर नै यो प्रडक्ट डेभलप गरिरहेको छौँ के चाहिन्छ त नेपाली मान्छेहरूलाई होइन अब हाम्रो मिलिट्री कम्युनिटी होस् एक्स मिलिट्री कम्युनिटी होस् हाम्रो जुन नर्सेसहरू हुनुहुन्छ अथवा सिजनल वर्कर्स उहाँहरूको निड के छ त्यो बुझेर चाहिँ हामीले त्यही अनुसार चाहिँ प्रडक्ट अडाप्ट पनि गरेको छौँ होइन अनि त्यसपछि सो वी ट्राई टु रिच देम one by understanding them using in the language अब हाम्रो language use पनि नेपालीमा communication style पनि नेपाली जुन कम्युनिटीले युज गर्नुहुन्छ अनि मान्छेहरू पनि जो चाहिँ उहाँहरूले रिलेट गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ उहाँहरूको थ्रु चाहिँ हामीले धेरैजनालाई रिच गर्न सकिरहेको छौँ होइन सो या आई वुड से लाइक in terms of history हामीले सुरु गरेको चाहिँ African countries-बाट हो तर one thing that stayed consistent throughout serving African countries as well as Asian countries is that हामीले चाहिँ एकदमै localized approach अनि really आफ्नो कम्युनिटीलाई चिनेर जानेर चाहिँ बल्ल चाहिँ एउटा प्रडक्ट इन्ट्रोड्युस गर्ने अथवा इम्प्रुभ गर्ने चाहिँ कोसिस गरिरहेको छौँ
हजुर त्यो सुन्दाखेरि त धेरै राम्रो लाग्यो होइन एउटा ग्लोबल कम्पनीले ग्लोबल अप्रोचमा चाहिँ त्यो कसरी चाहिँ त्यो प्रडक्टलाई चाहिँ एउटा त्यो लोकल नलेज र लोकल वेमा कसरी सर्भ गर्न मिल्छ भन्ने खालको अप्रोच आई थिङ्क द्याट्स वाट एभ्री वान सुड बी वर्किङ टुवर्ड्स बिकज we can't just operate in a one size fits all sort of method र जुन चाहिँ हामीले यो छोटो समयमा देख्दै पनि आइरहेको छौँ तपाईँहरूको प्रमोसन या मार्केटिङ स्ट्राटेजी होस् होइन तपाईँ त अब यहाँ बेलायतमा बसेर काम ट्यापट्यापको लागि काम गर्नुहुन्छ होइन तर तपाईँहरू जस्तो नेपाली टिमहरू चाहिँ ट्यापट्यापको कुन कुन देशमा हुनुहुन्छ किनभने मैले बुझेअनुसार भर्खरै यही साल नै 2022मै ट्यापट्याप अहिले युएसबाट पनि युएसको सर्टेन स्टेट्सहरूबाट पनि इट अपरेट्स फ्रम देयर एज वेल होइन
हजुर सो पार्ट अफ द taking the local approach is that like हामीले of course like you said हाम्रो Nepali people in the actual countries that people can send from होइन sender countries मा चाहिँ of course we're hiring people in Portugal recently in Dubai US मा पनि अनि हामीले चाहिँ के गर्न खोजिरहेको भने चाहिँ कम्युनिटी लेभलमा नै बरु somebody hire गर्ने होइन सो हामीले चाहिँ ब्रान्ड एम्बेसेडर्स भने चाहिँ डिफ्रेन्ट ठाउँमा युकेमा पनि पोर्चुगलमा पनि युएसमा पनि अब युकेकोमा युकेमा पनि डिफ्रेन्ट रिजन्समा अथवा डिफ्रेन्ट कम्युनिटिजमा डिफ्रेन्ट एम्बेसेडर्स राखेर चाहिँ काम गरिरहेको छौँ होइन सो वाट वेयर ट्राइङ टु डु इज लाइक इन्भल्भ द कम्युनिटी एज मच एज पोसिबल सो वान त अब नेपाल पैसा पठाउँदाखेरि त्यो इन्डिभिजुअललाई जसलाई चाहिँ सजिलो भयो अब फी पनि तिर्नु परेन उहाँलाई एउटा एडभान्टेज भयो होइन नेपाल पैसा पुग्दाखेरि अब त्यहाँ नेपाली इकोनोमीको लागि एउटा advantage भयो अनि त्यसपछि युकेमा while we're growing what we're trying to do is use the हाम्रो जुन कम्युनिटी मेम्बर्सहरू नै हुनुहुन्छ उहाँहरूलाई नै सँगै काम गरेर चाहिँ हामीले ग्रो गर्न खोजिरहेको छौँ होइन सो while we're growing we want to benefit the Nepali community in the UK as well so primary levelमा पनि secondary levelमा पनि जसरी हुन्छ नेपाली कम्युनिटीलाई चाहिँ जता भए पनि अलिकति एडभान्टेज होस् अलिकति अपर्च्युनिटी होस् भन्ने चाहिँ मेरो विचार छ
हजुर And on that note, I also have to make a special shout out to Taptap Send because Taptap Send is our silver partner for your Action with podcast series. And that's been a great help. And I think that's one of the things that keeps it, I think it's a great thing for the community because a podcast like this, it's not something that can just run and sustain by itself. But I think it's the support from companies like Taptap Send that really makes these conversations happen every week. र हजुरहरू घरमा हेरिराख्नु भएको छ र सुनिराख्नु भएको छ भने it's that simple. Go on your phone, Taptap Send download गर्नुहोस् र तपाईँहरूको पहिलो ट्रान्ज्याक्सन सेन्ड मा चाहिँ तपाईँहरूले एकछिन 10 promo code हाल्नुभयो भने चाहिँ you will receive a £10 bonus. Or £10 of that value, whether it's American dollars as well. तपाईँले यो छोटो समयमा नै few things mention गरिसक्नुभयो होइन नेपालीहरूले अब अमेरिकाबाट पनि पैसा पठाउन सक्नुहुन्छ धेरै ठाउँबाट नेपालमा पैसा पठाउन सक्नुहुन्छ तर पोर्चुगलको बारेमा पनि कुरा गर्नुभयो यहाँ बेलायतमा बसेर पनि यहाँको कम्युनिटीमा पनि काम गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ र slightly well-known individualsहरूसँग पनि काम गर्दै आउनुभएको छ तपाईँको हेराइमा चाहिँ अब ट्यापट्यापको अहिलेको यो छोटो समयमा चाहिँ नेपाल पैसा पठाउने मार्केटहरू यो तीनटा देशको होइन के कस्तो सिमिल्यारिटिज या भिन्नता देख्नु भएको छ किनभने अब I'm sure there's a lot of differences as well because depending on the demographic of Nepali people that are in these three different countries.
So हामीले सुरु गरेको भनेको चाहिँ युकेबाट हो होइन अब म पनि युके बेस्ड नै छु अनि कम्पनी पनि युके रेजिस्टर्ड नै भएको भएर चाहिँ हामीले सुरु गरेको चाहिँ युकेबाट हो अब अभियसली हजुर पनि युकेमा नै बसिराख्नु भएको छ अनि प्रब्लली हाम्रो लिसनर्सहरू पनि धेरैजना युकेबाटै हुनुहुन्छ सो युकेको जुन नेपाली कम्युनिटीको ब्याकग्राउन्ड छ हामीले अलिक हल्का बुझि नै रहेको छौँ होइन हामी धेरै जस्तो चाहिँ अब मिलिट्री ब्याकग्राउन्डबाट आएको छौँ अनि सिन्स हाम्रो अर्ली 2000sमा जब हामीले right to settle payo त्यसपछि like it's been relatively easy for us to come to the UK work here and settle here you know but what I find the difference is that like socio-economically चाहिँ जुन Portugal based migrants हरू हुनुहुन्छ उहाँहरू चाहिँ हल्का different background बाट आउनु भएको छ हैन जुन हाम्रो we have a certain level of certainty in terms of residency like त्यसको हाम्रो खासै चिन्ता गर्नु पर्दैन किनभने अब we have like we are able to come here through legal means we have the rights to live here whereas like Portugal based migrants are say a lot of them are on temporary visa हैन so त्यसको जुन residency को चाहिँ उनीहरुसँग त्यस्तो सारो certainty छैन for like 4 or 5 years they will be on a temporary visa and then they can apply for permanent residency or Portuguese citizenship so त्यो एउटा कुरा भयो हैन what I also find is like from particularly for our generation of course अब world level मा हेर्यो भने खासै हामी त्यति सारो privileged हैन हैन अब like as a woman and as like someone from an ethnic minority background like first generation migrant त्यस्तो सारो like privilege त छैन but in many ways अब नेपाली community भित्र नै हेर्ने हो भने चाहिँ हाम्रो certain level of privilege चाहिँ छ for especially coming from UK British military background you know our parents usually have built a certain level of wealth so हामी नेपालमा नै बसिरहेको भए पनि हामीले चाहिँ we would have reached a certain level of education होइन we would have had access maybe probably हामी पोर्चुगल जानु पर्थेन होला maybe हामी UK अथवा अस्ट्रेलियामा probably student भिजामा जान्थ्यौँ कि अथवा काठमाडौँ or पोखरामा बसेर certain level को job गर्थ्यौँ होला कि होइन सो त्यो privilege चाहिँ हामीसँग छ होइन अनि UK based migrants सँग छ त्यो चाहिँ मैले I do not find Portugal based migrants मा चाहिँ so हाम्रो we did a research with our current user base in Portugal so nearly 50% ले मात्र चाहिँ high school education सकाउनु भएको थियो हाम्रो Portugal users हरू which is a very different reality to the UK migrants होइन अनि another thing is कि obviously UK मा use हुने language भनेको English होइन नेपालमा पनि to a certain level it's common English भनेको एउटा हाम्रो लागि secondary language नै हो अनि अहिले चाहिँ अब गभर्नमेन्टले गर्दा पनि सबै स्कुल्सहरू गभर्नमेन्ट स्कुल्सले पनि English mediumमा नै सिकाउनुहुन्छ होइन so certain level of familiarity with English is there when you go to Portugal obviously you're having to speak in Portuguese, navigate a whole new country in a whole new language that you would probably never heard of. Portuguese भन्ने अब language say probably before Cristiano Ronaldo like became like really like a worldwide sensation or like before Nepali migrants started going to Portugal खासै हामी कसैलाई पनि त्यति साह्रो Portuguese language को knowledge त थिएन but now what the migrants are having to do is like navigate this whole new country in a whole new language so that brings a lot of barriers that we don't necessarily have to face as UK based Nepali migrants होइन so हामीले अब app introduce गर्दा पनि अब usually app चलाउनको लागि चाहिँ अब कार्ड चाहियो होइन अनि कार्ड once you've uploaded your card details and everything there's obviously 3DS checks of security checks that your bank enforces and what we found a lot of the times is that that check was so difficult for the Portugal based migrants to cross because once they left Taptap Send so Taptap Send चाहिँ Englishमा छ होइन so Taptap Send उहाँहरूले चलाउन सक्नुहुन्छ अथवा with help of like our ambassadors or their friends or family they can use Taptap Send but once they leave Taptap Send and then they have to go to like the bank portal to say like yes I made that transaction भनेर it's all in Portuguese right so you have 2 minutes to complete that whole procedure because the bank obviously gives you limited time to finish everything to ensure that it's actually you and you actually have the phone and you're doing everything yourself but उहाँहरूले अब त्यो फर्स्टली त त्यति साह्रो डिजिटली साभी हुनु हुँदैन होइन त्यसमाथि पोर्चुगिजमा सबै पढेर ट्रान्सलेट गरेर सबै गर्दाखेरि त उनीहरूको 3DS टाइम्ड आउट हुने होइन सो we faced a lot of issues like that so yeah generally to answer the question like there are a lot of differences between UK and US maybe are more similar but when you look at Portugal versus UK and US the socio-economic background how comfortable they are with like digital products there's a vast difference and then I think as we grow and we go to the Middle East you know we'll probably see this coming in again and then I think what's interesting also is that UK ma pani you'll find like the Nepali community is very strong but because I think of the joint struggle the fact that you know like ekarkale ekdamai madat garnu parcha Portugal ma chai हैन to navigate the system the community is like one that I've never seen before it's so strong it's really insane होइन सो लिस्बनमा सो मैले धेरै काम गरेको भने चाहिँ ओडिमेरा भन्ने रिजनमा हो त्यो भनेको चाहिँ एउटा एग्रिकल्चरल रिजन बिकज a lot of the Nepali migrants say work in agriculture अनि when I then went to Lisbon so I went to Odemira first and then when I went to Lisbon obviously that was a new city and then like as soon as I arrived there was like I could hear Nepali voices
really
Nepali voices at the train station on the street ani I don't know what it is like what the psychology is, what the science is, but I don't know if you find this. If you're in a crowd and like there's obviously lots of noises going on, I know it's really, really busy, but Nepali voice, Nepali language, say somehow you pick up like very easily. So Lisbon ma pani त्यही भयो हैन Nepali voices सुन्न पायो and then at that time I didn't have the metro card to like use the tube, and I heard like a Nepali voice, so I was like, okay, like let me ask this person for help. And what happened was they were like, oh, like don't worry, you can use mine, like I have one, you can use it, you don't have to pay me, there should be like this amount of money anyway, so you can like use it. Where are you going, like let me take you to that place. So yeah, the level of like support within the Nepali community in Portugal is like incredible, and I think that partly comes from the fact that like you're struggling together, and yeah, people I guess are like seeking out people from their own community. They understand each other's problems, they empathize with the fact that like, you know, मैले पनि like probably that person's been in Lisbon a little bit longer than me, so they really understand, okay, like उसले जो प्रब्लम मैले फेस गरेको थियो उसले पनि अहिले फेस गरिरहेको छ, सो मैले चाहिँ उसलाई हेल्प गर्नुपर्छ, त्यो जुन feeling and like mindset they have was like really incredible, and I was really, really truly touched by that. So like even once I came back from Portugal, like that's something that I reflected on a lot. Yeah, and it was like truly inspirational. Like obviously we talk about community and the importance of community, but yeah, I think I really understood and saw like what being part of a community really, really means, and that was really, really special.
Yeah, I think that's like quite powerful. And maybe that's something that maybe a lot of possibly our parents felt and experienced in their really early days of being a Nepali in the UK. And that might be through the connection of Nambaris, Maltanese, or the restaurant community of Nepali people who came in the 70s and 80s. जुन चाहिँ अहिले you know तपाईले touch गर्नुभयो, हामीहरु अब overall perspective मा त still कति कुराहरु नभए तापनि नेपाली यो धेरै हामी बाहिर विदेशीको populationहरुमा चाहिँ अहिले चाहिँ हामी एक किसिम त्यो एउटा कम्फर्ट साथले नै हामी अगाडि बसिरा छौं नि त. एन्ड आई थिंक त्यो राइट टु सेटल को कुरा गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो नभइन्जेलसम्म चाहिँ सबैजनाको माइन्डमा चाहिँ एक दिन हामी नेपाल फर्किन्छौं, सबै कुरा चाहिँ पैसा कमाउने चाहिँ अब पठाउनु पर्छ नेपाल, कसरी पठाउने, कसरी राम्रो रेट ल्याउने, घर जग्गा सबै जोड्नु पर्छ. तर त्यो 2006 पछाडी चाहिँ अब हामी यही काम गर्दै बसिरहेकोहरुको लागि चाहिँ एक्चुअली घर त अब यहाँ पनि हुने रहेछ नि त भन्ने पनि भयो, र कति मान्छेलाई चाहिँ अब उताबाट पनि हामी आउनु थाल्यो हैन. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's almost like there's a whole research that we can do completely just on the human movement of Nepali people and you know how हाम्रो language, हाम्रो culture kind of evolves with that. But going back to Taptap Send, अब अहिले त तपाईहरु थुप्रै मार्केटमा एक्सपान्ड गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ र encourage attractive promotionsहरु पनि लिइराख्नु भएको छ हैन. नेपालबाट नै क्याम्पेनहरु पनि भर्खरै थुप्रै इन्फ्लुएन्सर रिलेटेड क्याम्पेनहरु पनि हामीले देखिरहेको थियौं. हाल अहिले चाहिँ what's it like in terms of तपाईहरुको you know supporter base, user base चाहिँ के कस्तो छ अहिले चाहिँ TapTap, किनभने I understand that this is a very there are some really historic players in this market जुन चाहिँ हाम्रो नेपाली कम्युनिटीको यहीकै आमा बाबा अंकल आन्टीहरु पनि धेरै सुन्दै आउनु भएको उहाँहरुको चाहिँ फिजिकल प्रेजेन्स छ, जहाँ चाहिँ त्यो डिजिटल हेजिटेन्सी चाहिँ उहाँहरुले त्यो एक्सपीरियन्स गर्नु पर्दैन, किनभने उहाँहरु चाहिँ स्टिल भाइबरमा कल गरेर भाइ मैले पैसा हालेको त्यहाँ पुगेन भन्ने खालको त्यो वे अफ गिभिङ, वे अफ ट्रान्सफरिङ मनी पनि यहाँ प्रोभाइड गरिरहेको छ, जुन चाहिँ TapTap, बिकज इट्स अ भेरी डिजिटल अनलाइन बेस्ड एप बेस्ड प्लेटफर्म, त्यहाँ चाहिँ आई डोन्ट थिंक त्यो पाउँछ जस्तो लाग्यो हैन. सो फर अ एप लाइक TapTap, how are things going?
Welcome to A Star, your complete financial solution. The A stands for first class service and the star relates to you, our most important clients. We are a team of whole market advisors with more than 10 years of excellent service. Serving nationwide, we specialized in home mortgages and remortgages, wills and estate planning, residential sales and lettings, property management, real estates, insurances and pensions. For both personal and business financial advices, please feel free to contact us for consultant. We look forward to working with you. A-Star Financial Solution. Making your move memorable.
And huge shout out to our sponsors, A-Star Financial Solutions UK, New Laxmi Jewelers, Taptap Send, Nepal Authentic Dining, and Nepali Music Festival UK 2022.
Yeah, I think you've definitely touched on the fact that a lot of especially older generations, they have been relying on local players or like more well-known established players to send money to Nepal. You know? A lot of them use actually like physical stores, agents to send money. Oh, compared to us, where you will do it directly through your phone. Let's say what we found is that generally, if you're living within an ethnic enclave, like Aldershot or Jackson Heights, होइन अथवा जुन हाम्रो पोर्चुगलमा चाहिँ लिस्बनमा काम गरिराख्नु भएको छ भने चाहिँ हजुरलाई or लन्डनमा हजुरलाई यो फिजिकल प्लेयर्सहरूलाई एक्सेस गर्न चाहिँ सजिलो हुन्छ होइन किनभने every 5-10 स्टोर्समा चाहिँ हजुरले एउटा एजेन्ट पाउनुहुन्छ तर generally what we find is that most, of course, Aldershotमा ठुलो population छ तर नेपाली मान्छेहरू त widespread हुनुहुन्छ होइन throughout the UK. And ever since I started working at Taptap, I feel like I've seen the extent to which like where Nepali people are in all corners of the UK, all corners of America, all corners of Portugal, होइन so let's say it's not necessarily an option to go to the store. So what we're seeing is that हाम्रो ethnic enclavesहरूमा चाहिँ they do have an option, but खासै if you're living anywhere outside of Aldershot or outside of London, you do not necessarily have that means of sending money through physical stores, होइन अनि another factor that comes in is the fact that you don't always have time to go to these stores. Of course, like business hours भित्र जानु पर्यो 9 to 5, 9 to 6. A lot of the Nepali migrants are working in the healthcare industry, security industry. The hours are not always 9 to 5. The hours are usually like night time or very early in the morning. So त्यो physical stores मा जाने time पनि सधैँ मिल्दैन हैन अनि पोर्चुगलमा चाहिँ हामीले के देख्यो भने actually हाम्रो agricultural workersहरुको चाहिँ सिजनमा काम गर्नुहुन्छ हैन so सिजनमा especially summer seasonमा उहाँहरुले चाहिँ पिकिङको काम गर्नुहुन्छ so usually berriesहरु पिक गर्नुहुन्छ अनि सिजनको बेलामा चाहिँ हजुरले time off usually once a week, you might not even get that, हैन and it's such strenuous work, like you were working like on your feet, like with your hands for 10 to 12 hours. Like as soon as you go home, all you want to do is sleep. So for them, like this has made a huge difference because they don't necessarily have to wait till Sunday and queue up at their local like postal and send, because they can send when it's convenient for them, right? So that's usually probably like on the journey from their house to the farm, like Bosma, when they have like 15-20 minutes, like they can do that, or like just before bed. So although yes, like there are physical methods and maybe like some people do prefer them, I think we have to also consider like people who don't necessarily live near like physical stores, and for them like this is a much more convenient option, and it allows them to fit the app or like the act of sending money around their schedules. And yeah, so I think that's something to consider. Ani
Did you forget my first question? Sorry, I'm
What's your first question?
No, I think I said it in such a jumbled way, Halko. I think I kind of just wanted to touch on like how I don't know if you're able to share, but are there a lot of people using Taptap Send right now from all these three areas? That's what I wanted to say. And while I'm jumbling that question, I also wanted to say, what are certain trends? किनभने अस्ति अब दसैँ धमाकाको यो क्याम्पेन त भइरहेको थियो होइन सो त्यो समयतिर अब as we expect दसैँको बेलातिर चाहिँ do you see suddenly there's a lot of money being sent to Nepal from your base of people?
Okay, so UK मा चाहिँ we've been around a year and 6 months जति हैन so August 2020 मा सुरु गरेको थियो so August 2020 I think 6 months चाहिँ हामीलाई अलिकति difficulty नै भयो हैन market the thing with working in a startup and working within a growth position is that nothing exists before you in a sense किनभने like नेपाली मार्केटमा कसैलाई पनि Taptap को सेन्डको बारेमा थाहा छैन हैन अनि generally Nepali people when it comes to like digital products they're not always like trusting and like it's fair enough because you know like Nepali community भित्र नै धेरै scams हरु पनि भएको छ हैन and especially around the time like 2020 मा when we came around like there was a lot of scams around like जुन हाम्रो cryptocurrency को नाम लिएर like there were many scams happening in the Nepali community so when they thought about like okay something like a digital finance product they were like a little bit skeptical so trust gain गर्न पनि टाइम लाग्यो हामीलाई हैन so 6 months चाहिँ धेरै difficult भयो अनि त्यसपछि हाम्रो ठुलो टिम पनि थिएन त्यति बेला हैन तर once we hit the 6-month mark we really understood the community एउटा कुरा चाहिँ हैन अनि अर्को कुरा चाहिँ like we started experimenting more so previously चाहिँ हामीले purely community level मा मात्रै गरिरहेको थियो हैन community level marketing only using ambassadors within different groups then we started experimenting a little bit more with influencers a little bit more with events so हामीले different channels use गर्न थाल्यो हैन so that combined with like the fact that we are fee free we were offering fair rates all combined together so like it was a lot of experimentation so everything came in place around like the 6-7 month mark and then like we started like growing exponentially so now we're at a point where in the UK US मा त we're just starting out and even in Portugal हामीले काम त धेरै गरेको छौं अनि user base पनि strong नै छ but there's a lot more to be done but in the UK where we started out where we've been for a year and a half we've managed to build a very strong community of users हैन so every month we have thousands of returning users sending money home to Nepal to the level where like when my hypothesis when I started at Taptap Send was that there will obviously be people sending money from the UK to Nepal but it will mostly be like हाम्रो भर्खरै आउनु भएको हैन maybe less than 5 years भर्खरै settle भइराख्नु भएको maybe हाम्रो army community को भाइहरु who are not married yet whose families are still in Nepal like their girlfriends their wives are still in Nepal and they're still sending money back home maybe they're building their first house in Nepal so I was expecting ki okay market ramrai cha tara like it will mostly be those people that will be sending money as we've grown I've like the UK Nepali market has really surprised me because it's not just like young laurearu it's the older generation it's the aunties it's young students it's military associated like when the military guys like laureates eventually bring their partners over they also start working this is the first time like the women have opportunity and access to like a high level of income compared to like what they could be earning in Nepal
course,
yeah. Ani what we're seeing is like they're also supporting their family, which is a little bit unusual in the Nepali community. Their usually expectation is ki like केटाले काम गर्छ केटाले earn गर्छ अनि त्यसपछि केटाले फ्यामिलीलाई सपोर्ट गर्छ but what we're also seeing is like actually केटीहरू पनि आउँछ students maybe as students maybe like they initially come in as like partners to the laures they come in as nurses and they're really supporting like financially their families back home which is really interesting to see हैन so मेरो मैले त्यो सोचेको चाहिँ थिएन हैन and I think it's also a narrative and conversation that's not really had the fact that like women also economically support families women also send money back home भनेर त्यो त्यति सारो कन्भर्सेसन हुँदैन तर एक्चुअली गर्नु हुँदो रहेछ भनेर चाहिँ once the UK started growing and I had a closer look at the actual like user base that's what we started to see so actually मैले so what we usually do at Taptap Send is कि हामीले एउटा hypothesis राख्छौँ हैन then we experiment and see if like the hypothesis is correct or not and one of the hypotheses for me was that like okay probably men will use the product more than women and probably men will be sending higher amounts but like that is not the case it's like literally like 50-50 split नै छ हैन अनि जुन amount पनि like त्यस्तो सारो variation छैन so women are also like equal level मा UK मा चाहिँ contribute गरिराख्नु भएको छ हैन so generally हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ UK is growing really really quickly and what we're seeing is like women are sending men are sending it's not just migrants who are in their early stages in the UK it's like everybody अनि त्यसपछि young generation पनि like charities हरू support गर्ने or like कहिलेकाहीँ साथीहरूलाई बर्थडेमा पैसा पठाउने or like न्यू इयरमा पार्टी गर्नको लागि पैसा पठाउने हैन so I think that's been surprising for me is that like actually the remittance industry is so big हैन so त्यो चाहिँ मैले एक्सपेक्ट गरेको थिएन and as the UK has grown that's what we're seeing and like you mentioned like दशैंको बेलामा again so दशैंमा पनि हामीले त्यही हाइपोथेसिस राखेको थियो कि like दशैंको बेलामा चाहिँ like धेरै पैसा पठाउनु हुन्छ हैन so I think this year दशैं was like October end of October Tihar was like early November so we were like okay like get ready for Dasai like October November ma chai volumes are going to shoot up and like we need to be ready like everything needs to be in place bhanera chai sochirako थियो हैन but actually Dasai and Tihar was like our most turbulent period it was like randoms ups and downs हैन किनभने अब Dasai को period मा नेपाली banks हरु त बन्द हुन्छ so a lot of people are thinking actually like no like दशैंको period मा पठायो भने चाहिँ like पैसा पुग्दैन or like which is not true you can send during like weekends you can send during holidays and you still receive the money हैन so त्यस्तो mind thought process पनि हुँदो रहेछ हैन so what we saw is actually a lot of the movement actually happens like a month before Dasai so maybe like August, September ma chai you see like a peak in the money sending हैन and actually like Dasai ko period ma chai actually people are like calmer like maybe if the rate is good like they'll send a ola हैन तर खासै everything is sent in advance
right
and that's something very interesting about the Nepali community is that we are savers we like to save and send in bulk we don't do like ए ल अहिले यति पठाउँछु भोलि यति पठाउँछु त्यस्तो माइन्डसेट चाहिँ राख्दैनौँ हामीले युजुअली हामीले देखेको अनुसार चाहिँ हैन so people like to save a bulk amount of money and then like send it for like something like okay like 3 महिनाको लागि स्कुल फिस चाहिँ ल यो मन्थ पठाइराछु भनेर एडभान्समा पठाउने अथवा like यो चाहिँ यो बिल्सहरुको लागि भनेर or like दशैं तिहारको सबै like preparations को लागि चाहिँ months in advance पठाउने so त्यो trends are it's been very interesting and like I like the fact that like I've had hypotheses and like I've been proven wrong like I really like that about this job
that's so
and
exciting.
I think that's something exciting about like working within startup is like you never know what's going to happen and because you're doing it for the first time like no one knows before you and you're kind of like figuring out as you go so it's been interesting the trends have definitely been not always what I've expected, and I think that's part of what makes it interesting. And I think it also personal level मा चाहिँ it's helped me be more open-minded. किनभने मैले जे सोचेको थिएँ त्यो त भएन नि त हैन. So that means like I don't know everything. I have to be open, I have to experiment, and I have to go with the community that I'm serving rather than me trying to put in like a certain thing. बरु उहाँहरूले के प्रिफर गर्नु हुँदो रहेछ त्यही अनुसार चाहिँ मैले I have to move, right? Rather than like trying to enforce something like, okay, no, I want to make sure that like these people send at this time भन्दा पनि ल मार्कमा के हुँदो रहेछ त कम्युनिटीले के प्रिफर गर्नु हुँदो रहेछ त त्यो to have the opportunity to learn that, like it's been really humbling and it's been really interesting, and like it's definitely like personal level मा चाहिँ it's helped me become more open-minded as well. Yeah.
It's incredible to hear all that you just kind of shared. Definitely, I feel like next year को दशैंको campaign चाहिँ एक महिना अगाडिदेखि नै सुरु हुने रहेछ भनेर चाहिँ बुझियो हैन. तर आज तपाईले सबै यो कुराहरु गर्नुभएको छ नि. हामीले कम्युनिटीको बारेमा कुरा गर्यौं, टच गर्यौं, माइग्रेसनको बारेमा, र अब as हाम्रो कम्युनिटी move forward and onwards हाम्रो कस्तो खालको रिलेशनशिप हुन्छ नेपालसँग भनेर. तर no doubt हामी जति नै वर्षसम्म बाहिर देशमा बसे पनि हैन त्यो connection to Nepal चाहिँ different way मा change mode होला तर रहने रहेछ भनेर चाहिँ मैले यो पडकास्ट गरेर पनि देख्दै छु बुझ्दै छु किनभने हाम्रो कति गेस्टहरु चाहिँ आउटसाइड अफ द नेपाली कम्युनिटी जसको चाहिँ बाजेहरुको पालादेखि नै उहाँहरु युके मा बस्दै आउनु भएको छ हैन तर their connection to Nepal albeit might be different from how us alikati Gorkhali kids might experience, but it's still pretty much there. Right. र अर्को चाहिँ अब रेमिटेन्स को बारेमा कुरा गर्नु भयो. I think हिजो कि अस्तिको दिन मात्रै नयाँ फिगर्स अनाउन्स भएको थियो. यो year ending this point मा चाहिँ कति अर्ब चाहिँ विदेशबाट पठाएको रेमिटेन्सहरु छ भनेर, and that's a huge figure. And in a way, it's almost quite sad as well. Yes. But it almost showcases how much that बाहिर बसेर विदेशमा काम गरिराखेर विदेशमा सेटल हुनुभएको नेपालीहरुले चाहिँ नेपालमा पैसा पठाइराख्नु भएको छ अनि त्यसले चाहिँ एउटा हाम्रो इकोनोमीलाई नै धेरै साथ सपोर्ट गरिरहेछ. A lot of this touches on you know the study of people, the study of geography, you know, which I believe you studied as well. And that's how we met once upon a time at a university event. त्यो समयमा चाहिँ did you ever study, because a lot of the times when you were talking about कति मान्छेहरुको चाहिँ अब physical store presence हुँदैन हैन, सो त्यही कारण उहाँहरुलाई अहिलेको समयमा त एप डाउनलोड गर्नु इज इजी हैन. अहिले त अब बैंकहरुको ब्रान्च पनि हुँदैन धेरै ठाउँमा. हामीले जियोग्राफीमा पढ्दाखेरि फाइनान्शियल एक्सक्लुजनहरुको बारेमा कति पढ्नु परेको थियो किनभने युके मा पनि धेरै ठाउँ छ जहाँ चाहिँ बैंकहरु छैन हैन. त्योहरु कुरा गरिरहेको थियो अनि I was just like, actually I wonder if Sristi finds this really interesting from a very, you know, that kind of human perspective of things as well. So I wanted to ask, त्यो समयमा when you were studying at university, what sort of aspirations or plans that you had in mind?
Yeah, I think I was reflecting on this, like when I knew that like I was going to be a guest on the podcast, I was thinking about like, okay, like when was the last time I actually met Laxmi? Like, how do I know him? Or like, sochirako thiye and I remember that we met at university, like you said, and I think it was like King's College ma. Nepal talks or
Conversations of Nepal.
Yes, Conversations
which I organized.
Yeah, so like I remember that's where we met, and it feels like a completely different time, and I think I was a completely different person in many ways, and in many ways I'm still the same person, if that makes sense. I know, and I'm sure for you as well, there's lots of change that's happened since that time. I think that was like 2016. Correct, yes. 2017 jati, you know. So at that time, yes, like I was studying geography. And now that we're having this conversation, like I'm remembering my thesis, my dissertation, मैले actually Nepali domestic workers working in the UK and how they use social media and like mobile devices to negotiate the constraints of like domestic work, हैन. So domestic work, usually domestic workers are चाहिँ उहाँहरुले घर भित्र नै काम गर्नुहुन्छ, so उहाँहरुको employer को घर भित्र नै live in बसेर चाहिँ काम गर्नुहुन्छ हैन. So that means like usually they might not get a day off, or अब rural area मा बस्नु भएको छ भने त उहाँहरुको transportation पनि हुँदैन हैन. So they can't really leave the house and or anything. So I studied how like they would use their phone in order to stay in touch with their community, in touch with Nepal, in touch with their family, होइन UK based community सँग कसरी इन्भल्भ हुनुहुन्थ्यो फोनबाट अथवा लाइक उहाँहरूको चिल्ड्रेनहरूसँग कसरी इन्भल्भ हुनुहुन्थ्यो उहाँहरूको चिल्ड्रेनको लाइफमा होइन सो already at that point, I was really seeing the impact of like digital devices like phones or tablets and the power it had for somebody to stay connected to what was important to them. होइन अब हाम्रो domestic workers को केसमा चाहिँ उहाँहरूको family धेरै important थियो होइन सो उहाँहरूले कसरी like Viber, especially Viber कसरी चलाउनु भयो त होइन before Viber we had calling cards. अनि calling cards भनेको महँगो पनि छ, it's limited time, you have to purchase it like physically and then use it in a scratch. Viber let's say it honestly like revolutionized things for the Nepali community in the sense that this was the first free, of course like MSN or तर I think MSN or say it was more younger generation using it, right? The Viber say it's like universal. Like everyone uses Viber, like auntie-haru, uncle-haru, baजे-haru, boजे-haru, सबैले चलाउनुहुन्थ्यो नि त हैन. So I really saw how like something so simple like this technology really impacted people's lives, and it really was like for many people it was the only thing like that was keeping them sane, to be honest, like based on like the people that I spoke to, like that was the only thing that would get them by, like being able to have a conversation with their children every single day. That is what kept them sane, that is what kept them like motivated. So already मैले undergrad level मा नै त्यो digital devices हरुको power चाहिँ देखिसकेको थिए हैन. अनि so migration related पनि थियो मेरो त्यो study हैन. अनि since then चाहिँ I moved to Nepal because I wanted to work in international development. So a lot of the work studies that we do within geography is related to international development and migration. And मेरो main focus in my third year चाहिँ त्यो नै थियो हैन. So I knew I wanted to work in international development after finishing my geography degree. अनि त्यसपछि म नेपाल गएँ हैन. नेपालमा काम गरेँ for 2.5 years within the development sector. But while I was in Nepal, what I saw was that like business sector, private sector ले चाहिँ धेरै नै impact ल्याइरहेको थियो compared to government sector or like the non-profit sector, in the sense that they were the actual like employment providers, right? They were the actual that was the actual sector that was giving people like a means to live, like money coming in every single month. So once I saw that, I was like, okay, I want to work in the private sector.
In Nepal.
In Nepal, also like within the international development space, because I can see that like private sector ले धेरै impact गर्न सक्छ. And it's usually moving way, way faster than like, especially Nepalको government sector भन्दा त एकदमै fast pace मा move गरिराख्नु भएको छ. अनि नेपाललाई चाहिएको भनेको नै, नेपाली मान्छेलाई चाहिएको भनेको नै employment हो नि त. That's the whole reason everybody is moving, because they want a means of income. They want to like advance their life financially, socially. So they're looking for job, and because they cannot find jobs, they're moving away. So मैले नेपालमा नै I was like, okay, like I want to work within this sector, and I want to maybe eventually work somewhere where like I can, or create something of my own where I can like provide employment to Nepali people. So that's what I had in mind. हैन. COVID happened, I moved to the UK to do my masters. So I did my masters in digital business.
I see.
And so the thought I had in mind was कि I want to work within the intersection of international development, migration, business and tech. So त्यो सबै combination भएको ठाउँमा चाहिँ मलाई काम गर्नु छ हैन. One चाहिँ अब मेरो academic background नै geography मा भएर international development र migration भयो. अनि secondly, मेरो experience in Nepal, I saw like private sector is making an impact, is providing employment. We talked about how like technology wise, like what big of a difference like simple technology makes for Nepali migrants. So I knew these were like मेरो interest areas. And then I came to the UK, I did my master's in business, and I was like, okay, like I want to combine all of these things. And to be honest, like I think I'm very lucky because within Taptap Send, like that's what I found. I get to use मेरो geography ko knowledge and learnings, use मेरो Nepal ko experience, work with the Nepali community, like the community that I love, I know, and also work within like a business role. So yeah, definitely like when we met in 2017, I was the geography student. I didn't necessarily know where I was going. Like I knew I wanted to work in international development, but exactly ke गर्ने थाहा भएन. But like looking now in 2022, like I feel like everything led to this, and like I'm so grateful for my geography education. Obviously at that time I was like, okay, is this the right degree? And like obviously doing a social sciences degree from like as a Nepali person, it's not, I think it's becoming more common. But at that time it wasn't as common. Like literally all of my all of the other students within my lecture halls, like within my year, was like literally white. It was like 95% white. And I was also like, okay, like what's gonna happen? I don't necessarily have like a vocation. I'm not gonna be a doctor. I'm not gonna be necessarily a lawyer. So like, what is it that I'm gonna do? And I think that's but like with geography, like I think it really just opened my mind, and it like allowed me to think outside the box, and like to really open up and be open about like what could be possible. Like I think in a way it's not necessarily a creative degree, but it allowed me to think about like, okay, what is possible? Like what is possible in the world? What kind of world do I want to see? Where do I see myself? And then kind of create a role or find myself somewhere that I can do exactly what I want. Like I think that's what it allowed me to do. Like it really allowed me to open my mind. And so yeah, it's been a interesting and long journey, but yeah, I think looking back now, I think this is
while you have a glass of water, definitely I think त्यो event मा 2016 मा थियो होला King's College मा Sristi first time भेट्दाखेरि Sristi told me that she was doing geography, and त्यति बेला नि that's why I remember you so much, किनभने धेरै मान्छेहरू, धेरै especially नेपालीहरू geography पढिरहेको भेटिँदैन पनि. Some I've met only, and some I've found that they just happen to stumble upon the degree, and last month they don't really enjoy it, and I always feel sad. But then to hear that you've actually enjoyed that learning and so on, it's great to hear that, and the way that I think all of your themes have kind of merged, and in a way now Taptap Send ma चाहिँ the themes are, and you can kind of explore further. I think that's incredible, which is great to hear. अर्को चाहिँ के पनि सोध्न मन थियो भने त्यो समयमा जुन बेला आफूले नेपालमा बिताएको थियो हैन काम गर्दै, त्यति बेला पनि हामी एकचोटी चाहिँ झलक्क एउटा इभेन्टमा नै टक इभेन्ट्समा नै भेटेको थियो. I love how we just frequent talk events that we're so like ready to hear people's perspectives and stories. त्यति बेला you briefly mentioned to me यो कुन ठाउँमा काम गरिरहेको थियो भनेर पनि हैन. I'm not too sure हजुरको background के हो in terms of कति कहाँ जन्मिनु भएको, कहाँ हुर्किनु भयो भनेर पनि. I think that also makes a huge difference in our relationship with Nepal, or our kind of willingness to kind of go back and try something भनेर पनि. तर आफूलाई चाहिँ हैन कस्तो खालको त्यो अनुभव भएको थियो, कतिको गाह्रो सजिलो या के कुराले चाहिँ आफूलाई सरप्राइज पनि गरेको थियो कि?
So there were many reasons for me moving to Nepal, you know. एउटा चाहिँ what we touched upon, हाम्रो background geography भएपछि like international development र migration मा धेरै study गरेपछि चाहिँ मलाई चाहिँ field level मा नै काम गर्नु थियो हैन. काम गर्नु मन थियो किनभने UK मा obviously international development jobs are available, but they're more focused on like campaigns, like fundraising, things like that, which obviously is important as well. But I wanted to work at the field level. So I was like, if I want to do that, I need to realistically go to like a developing country. and like obviously Nepal's one that I already have connection with. I already speak the language, so it makes like rational sense. And I think another reason I wanted to move to Nepal was also a lot to do with identity. I know. When I grew up in the UK, I was living in a very white area. So I was living in a village called Wimbish in Essex, and everyone was white. I was trying to kind of figure out like who I am, and so
How old were you when you moved to the UK?
I was 10.
Okay.
And so while I was at Saffron Walden High School, so A-levels, I was like, okay, like for university, I want to go to London. I don't want to go anywhere else because I want to go where like there are lots of different cultures, lots of different people from different backgrounds. So I want to completely escape this like white life that I have
Small
here.
town, yeah.
And so I only applied to like, I think you could apply to 5 different universities at that time. I applied to 4 London universities and 1 outside of London, but that was kind of just like because I had to put the 5th one.
What was it? Royal Holloway?
No, it was Exeter. I don't know why I picked
Exeter
that.
is very far, right?
I don't know why I picked that, but I picked
like a different
Exeter for
country.
some reason. I know.
Okay.
And this was I think I just did it based on like rankings rather than anything else, apart from the London universities. So once I applied, I was like, okay, and I lived my life in London. Like I enjoyed it. Like I was with people from different backgrounds, different minorities, and so I felt more comfortable. But I felt like, okay, I don't fully feel. This is not enough. Kalko feel no, you know, and of course, like people, they were from like different ethnic groups that like it was. I felt like I wasn't getting like a pure Nepali experience. I wanted to fully experience and understand my Nepali side. So I was like, the only way I can do that is if I go to Nepal. And once I went to Nepal, I also felt like it's now or never. किनभने म भर्खरै ग्रेजुएट भएँ हैन मेरो त्यस्तो सारो responsibilities छैन मेरो family like I don't have children to look after or like I haven't necessarily started my career yet. If I get settled in the UK, if I work for like 2-3 years, definitely I will have like less reason to come back and settle, like live here. So I want to do it now khalko feeling ayo. So I stayed there. Ani I think look like now I don't think as at the age I am, like as a 28-year-old, I wouldn't do what I did then. Like it really helped the fact that I was young. I was like to an extent naive. I was optimistic. I was like, I can do anything. I can change the world. I can have an impact on a great scale. Like I was a brave one, ki stupid one, ki one, but like I was just like, I can do anything kalko mindset.
I can go for it.
I can go for it. I can do anything. I didn't necessarily think about like the rationalities, like, okay, you're living in a developing country that comes with like certain things like infrastructurally, you know, but opportunities wise, there's like differences. There are certain disadvantages that you're going to have. I didn't think about that. I was like, I'm just going to go for it. But once, like, I think 6 months like it was so easy. I was like rose tinted glasses and everything's great, everything's amazing. This was the 6 months mark, 1 year mark. Like as I started working there, it was definitely challenging. It was very, very challenging as a woman and within the role that I was doing. So I was working in good governance ko kaam garira thiyo, no? So we were working directly with people from Single Darbar, ministries, things like that. And you go to Nepal, you start working, already timlai euta level ko culture shock huncha, हैन? किनभने NGOs ma NGOs ma already there are people who studied in Europe or like US, and they come back and they work in international development or certain level of education, certain background बाट हुनुहुन्छ हैन. So उहाँहरुसँग adjust गर्न पनि time लाग्छ भने if you then throw someone into like Nepali public service, public sector, I was shocked. The first time I went into Single Darbar, I was like, like that was, I think that was the first time it really hit me that I'm in Nepal, I live in Nepal and I work here. It was very, very unprofessional, I know. We had a meeting at Singadarbar, and at that time, like the NGO that I was working at, like we were very tight on resources. So I was leading the whole like fellowship program that I was managing, I know. And I think I was like 23 at the time. So I was dealing with public partners who were like Sachiv level ko मान्छेहरु हैन, अनि ministers level ko मान्छेहरु. I was managing people, including men who were like older than me. They didn't necessarily respect me. Ani like so already NGO मा काम गर्दा नै struggle भइरा थियो हैन. तर त्यहाँ सिंहदरबारमा गइसकेपछि चाहिँ the lack of respect one they had for me because I was young, because I was a woman, it was like honestly incredible. And recently I was in Nepal and I was talking to a colleague who was working with me at that time, I know, and we were just saying like, I think if you heard the stories you wouldn't believe it, like, but like we, like it feels like a movie almost. Like we were just like, we can't believe we experienced that. We had to go through that. We had like literally no support. खालको कुरा भइराको थियो हैन. So generally in terms of like, there are infrastructurally पनि गाह्रो छ. As a woman, you're gonna have to go through certain struggles that maybe men are not gonna have to go through. Opportunities wise पनि there are limited opportunities compared to the UK. Like UK ma कुनै पनि field ma you can like work.
Yeah.
Like I'm like working in a very, I'm like, okay, I want to work in the intersection of like international development, tech or business. Like this mapani, I'm finding a role. That's never going to happen in Nepal, right? Like you have to go for what's available. So धेरै कुरा like rationally सोच्दाखेरि चाहिँ now I'm like, I don't think I would have made that, I would make that move now. But like, I think at that time, because I was young, I was in a completely different mindset. I made that decision, but yeah, it was definitely difficult. And I feel like I've just rambled now and like,
I think that's great. I think that's such a, not everything in life is so structured and our answers don't have to be as well. I mean, within all that you shared, there were so many learning points. And अर्को चाहिँ अब, I know that you mentioned that there were certain kind of experiences that you would not want other people to have, or as a young 23-year-old woman, maybe you were too early, it was not fair for you to kind of experience. But I also think that that's such a, it's the young people who have this fire, okay, who have this energy and joy, which
for sure.
I can relate. And I'm just like, sometimes now I'm a 30-year-old and I feel like, oh my God, I feel like this level of passion has just died.
Honestly,
attitude you really feel like you can change the world. And sometimes I do think, do I want to be that 30-year-old who, or do I want to be that person who's like, actually, no, you can't change the world, or be like, actually, no, go do it, go do whatever you need to do, because you'll do it for yourself. And if sometimes some people end up doing extraordinary things, then you might end up changing something for the entire community, etc. So I think it's that sometimes it takes us somewhere, but now when you look back, it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah, I think also like as you get older, you start thinking about like family, or like you start thinking about maybe, I don't like the term like settling down, like, you know, like like buying a house or like being financially stable.
Oh my God, let me just say, even in your early 30s or 30s, then you start thinking, okay, ghar pani bhayo, career pani bhairayeko cha haina, aba bacha partner, if you want, maybe it will happen. If it might not happen, and then you think, where's the next fire? What's the next spark? Okay? So I think there's your human nature ko alikati hune nei hola, so I think every now and again we need to kind of check in on what our kind of value for that fire is going to be. Otherwise, I think life becomes very stale, Nita. So I think hopefully there'll be much more interesting challenges along the way and adventures in addition to Taptap.
Yeah, I think one thing like what this has made me think of is key, like like when I was younger and I went to Nepal and I felt like I could adapt to anything. बिकज मेरो माइन्डसेट नै लाइक म जे पनि गर्न सक्छु म वर्ल्ड नै चेन्ज गर्छु लाइक म एकदमै राम्रो काम गर्नेवाला छु भनेर त्यो माइन्डसेट थियो होइन सो जे च्यालेन्ज आए पनि आई वाज लाइक नो आम गोना फेस इट खालको होइन एन्ड देन वन्स आई कम ब्याक टु द युके एन्ड लाइक there are certain things that you get very comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
The fact that you have a hot shower,
Yeah.
the fact that you can eat whatever you want. It's like little things, but like it makes life so convenient.
Yeah.
I know.
This sounds so bratty, होइन तर अर्को चाहिँ मलाई के लाग्छ भने यहाँ कस्तो लाइफ कन्भिनियन्ट र सजिलो छ द्याट इट मेक्स अस इन अ वे अल्छी क्या होइन अब मलाई अब के अर्डर गर्नु मन छ भने ओके दिस इज रियली ब्याड एक्जाम्पल बिकज नट गुड फर द इन्भाइरोमेन्ट तर मलाई के अर्डर गर्नु मन छ भने समटाइम्स आई क्यान गेट इट डेलिभर्ड टुडे नै or आई क्यान गेट इट डेलिभर्ड टुमोरो नेक्स्ट डे डेलिभरी एभ्रिथिङ तर नेपाल या अरू देशमा त्यो छैन भनेको चाहिँ होइन तर कहिले काहीँ चाहिँ अलिकति इट्स नट एज इजी द सिस्टम्स इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चरहरू अलिकति त्यहाँ पुगेको छैन नि त होइन यहाँतिर त अब त्यो कुराहरू भयो कति धेरै कुरा सजिलो छ नि त अलिक नसोचिकन क्या वेयर जस्ट लाइक अटो मोडमा क्या सो आई worry for our brain because a lot of it is not being used right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, but actually, it's interesting you say that, Kinabane. I think the things that actually prompted me to move back to the UK were actually those minor inconveniences that eventually add up.
Yeah.
I know. Kinabane, at that time, mero mission bhaneko chai I want to like contribute to Nepal's development थियो हैन. So I had an end vision, I had an end goal, and so like I was striving for that. But in that process, it was like the little things, like as soon as you leave the house, like there's like an uncle like staring at you, and I'm like, oh my god, like you look like you have your own kids, like you're like a 40-year-old, why are you staring at me like up and down while I'm walking? Pollution bhayo, हैन अब also like transportation pani, you can't always Nepal's salary is going to be very different to a UK salary, right? So you can't always afford to like get a taxi or like maybe even like patao garna pani, maybe not everyone can afford that, right? So if you're getting public transportation, seat paundaina, you know, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but like I want to highlight the everyday realities, right?
Yes.
You don't get a seat, it's cramped, it's slow, you know. So by the time तिमी office, of course end goal त या नेपालको development like contribute गर्ने हो हैन तर तिमी office पुग्ने बेलासम्म नै त्यो 1 घण्टाको commute मा नै तिमी you've so much energy has been spent that like it's quite difficult to then like build yourself back up and then start again, you know. So I think the minor inconveniences actually contributed over time to me being like, oh my god, can I really live here like long term bhanne. So as I say, like I think I started getting because of those things, because the fact that I want to work in international development, the fact that like I want to stay connected to the Nepali community, the fact that like I want to contribute to like Nepal's economy, that has never changed for me. It's just like the little things that eventually contributed me to question like, can I do this one? It was definitely the minor things, I know. So I think like, not that I'm one to give advice, everyone's experience is different, but if anyone is planning to move to Nepal or anything like that, like I think you have to just like remember that you have to focus on the end goal. And like you have to be able to let go of the small things, and it's actually very challenging to do so. That are like timro end vision र end goal चाहिँ एकदमै strong हुनु पर्छ हैन. And those inconveniences, to the point that those inconveniences will affect you, but they don't matter, okay?
Yeah.
हैन. So yeah, definitely if anyone is planning to do that, the end vision say like has to be really strong, and I think you have to constantly remind yourself of that, because the minor inconvenience is definitely challenging हुँदै जान्छ, थप्दै जान्छ everyday experience गरेपछि like के हो यो जस्तो feel हुने हैन. So yeah, I think that was more challenging than the bigger stuff.
No, that is so true. Thank you for being so honest about it as well, because कहिले काहीँ चाहिँ अब हामी जति तैले यहाँ बस्दाखेरि चाहिँ we always look at somewhere with a very romantic perspective हैन, अनि रोमान्टिसाइज पनि धेरै गर्छौँ. र अब नेपाल हामी छुट्टीमा जाने मात्र बानी भएर हामीले सोच्छौँ छुट्टीमा जाँदाखेरि त सबै सजिलो हुन्छ हैन, तर त्यहाँ बस्न थाले पछाडि त्यही हो सबसे सानो कुराहरू which you experience on the day, it adds up. But identity wise, so do you feel much more at peace or at content with being who you are, where you are right now?
Like I previously mentioned, more I grew up in a very white village, went to a very white school, wanted to escape that, wanted to go to London so I could be with like ethnic minority background ko मान्छेहरु हैन. And त्यसपछि obviously moved to Nepal because I was like, okay, I still don't feel like fully Nepali, or I don't feel like I've understood मेरो Nepali side भनेर चाहिँ obviously moved to Nepal हैन. अनि नेपालमा 2 वर्ष 2.5 वर्ष बसिसकेपछि चाहिँ like my Nepali became stronger पनि हैन. अब language पनि अनि culturally पनि like सबै as an adult living in Nepal, like I felt truly Nepali and I felt like I belonged completely. And also what I liked about living in Nepal is that I was anonymous. Like I looked like everybody else. No one is looking at me. No one cares about me because I look like the other girl, like just walking past, right? I don't look different to the other people. So त्यति बेला like I just felt very Nepali and I felt very comfortable in myself. No one was asking me where are you from or like कताबाट आको के कसैले सोध्दैन कसैले केयर पनि गर्दैन because I look like everybody else. I speak the same language. Culturally पनि like I had obviously adapted to some level to like Nepali culture, like Nepal based culture नै. So त्यति बेला धेरै comfortable feel भयो हैन. त्यसपछि UK फर्किसकेपछि चाहिँ I felt so Nepali, and also after spending 2.5 years there हैन I felt more comfortable in Nepali मा बोल्न. अनि मेरो accent पनि like अहिले म English बोल्दाखेरि हल्का Nepali accent, Kathmandu accent, अनि British accent mix भएर like अलिकति I was sounding
becoming
more,
a global accent.
It was becoming more Nepali accent khalko English, हैन. And then I spoke to, as soon as I arrived, I was speaking to one of my friends, what's the word? Not a friend. Acquaintance.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. And त्यसपछि उसको चाहिँ like fully English accent ma हैन कुरा गरिरहेको थियो. And त्यसपछि like perfect English vocabulary, perfect like grammar and everything, and I was like shit, like how do I fit back in now? किनभने मेरो त like अब नेपालीमा बोल्ने बानी भइसक्यो, accent पनि change भइसक्यो, अब चाहिँ म कसरी UK मा fit in हुने त झन् त्यो पो like tension पर्न थाल्यो हैन as soon as I came back and having had that interaction with that person. Then I reflected on it and I was like, okay, like म नेपाली हो भनेर चाहिँ अब चाहिँ इस्टाब्लिश भयो. 2 वर्ष नेपालमा गएर बसेँ, अब त्यो चाहिँ इस्टाब्लिश भयो. म ब्रिटिश हो त भनेर त्यो क्वेसन आउन थाल्यो हैन. And then I think now I'm at a point like I've been back since February of 2020 को February मा आएको थिएँ back हैन. So I think it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Ani now say I feel like okay, I am Nepali and I am also British and I have no one to prove that to. Like I feel very comfortable being both those things. And I think previously say I used to be like, oh, I'm British Nepali or I'm Nepali British, but now what I say is like I'm Nepali and I'm also British. But say that's how, if I ever had that conversation with somebody, that's how I would introduce myself, because I feel like they are two distinct things. And of course like British Nepali भन्ने पनि एउटा अर्कै distinct thing हो हैन. But I think like after my experience in Nepal I feel very Nepali, and then like having grown up in the UK and the fact that UK is a very global place, like, and even though I have an accent when I speak English now, like that doesn't mean I'm not British, you know. कस्तो global ठाउँ हो हैन. सबैको like obviously Britain ko history अनुसार पनि हैन, we are an island made up of very different backgrounds, and so त्यो पनि like I feel British पनि हैन. So I feel strongly both. I feel Nepali पनि, I feel British पनि, and I think but maybe this is something that comes with age. I don't feel like that is a question that like hurts my brain at night. Like I don't lose sleep. I don't like spend too much time thinking about like how do I fit in, or like
where do I fit in?
Yeah, what do people think of me? How do people see me? Wonder त्यो सारो त्यति सारो matlab hudaina. But I think that's only because I went through the whole
All the
journey,
journey,
right?
yeah.
From like a 10-year-old who moved to the UK all the way to now a 28-year-old like who's like gone back to Nepal, come back to the UK and like working here. Balla tyo kati like over like 20 years journey पछि बल्ल like I'm feeling a certain sense of like the fact that it doesn't bother me anymore. Like I feel like I'm comfortable now. It's not really an issue for me anymore. And like we're talking about like human tendencies of a human brain, you know. Now that I feel like that, I'm like, oh, what was I worrying about? Like, you know, tension lidako hola. त्यस्तो feel हुन्छ, but actually, like,
because
it's because like,
you're
I'm
at that
already
stage
at that stage now, okay? And I think, I think that's something also like to keep in mind, ki, like, just because you are at a certain point in your journey, don't forget where you were before, and like, I think remembering your journey and also acknowledging where you are now, I think also helps you to empathize with other people who are maybe at like a different point in their journey, right?
Correct.
So I think, so I think that's something that I want to like always remember and like try not to make it a smaller deal and be like, oh, like what was the point of all of that? Like, because it was very important. And I think your job mapani, like it's been very important for me to like acknowledge ki, like the position that maybe a migrant coming in right now, I've also like, we haven't been in the same position, but I can empathize with the fact that this person like is not familiar. They don't feel like they belong here. It's hard for them maybe to communicate. Tyo कुरा चाहिँ like I see that, and like I think it helps me a lot to connect and empathize with the community that I'm working in with as well, and it helps me feel closer to the people that I'm serving. So I think the journey's been an interesting one.
No, I think that's great. I think it's really good that
I feel like it's come full circle. The fact that I'm working with the Nepali community, I'm working with the migrant community.
I think जुन तरिकाले आफूले त्यो journey lead गर्यो, त्यो quest of identity searching, trying to place oneself, हैन, त्यो sense of belonging भन्ने कुराहरु आउँछ नि, त्योहरु गरेको I think कति धेरै मान्छेको हुन्छ होला हैन, कतिको सायद नहोला, which is great too, तर it's something that really helps us and adds to our learning and knowledge of life as well, हैन, and helps us meet so many different and diverse people as well. Going back to अब UK को कुरा आउँदाखेरि अब language, accent, हैन, कति धेरै, you know, poetryहरु पनि कति हामीले पढ्नु पर्थ्यो नि पहिला anthology मा GCSE हरुमा, हैन, what's in a name, what's in a language खालको टाइपको, and equally तपाई अंग्रेजी नै बोल्नु हुँदैन भने पनि if you're born and raised here or however you identify, that's you, हैन, whether you are British but do not speak English or do not speak in the accent that is deemed English or British. I think a lot of us are changing things right now, and a lot of young people are speaking up as well. And that's why I'm like, young people, is there something you want to do, just do it. Because sometimes I'm like, oh my god, I would never be able to do that. But then I was just like, oh my god, we did some interesting stuff too back then. So on that note, I think we're finally coming to the final part of the podcast. तपाईहरुले सुनिराख्नु भएको छ भने धेरै धेरै thank you. तर जानु भन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ what I want to ask Sristi is looking ahead. I'm not sure when this podcast is landing. Might be 2023 or January or December 2022. But looking ahead, what's in store, or what kind of plans or ideas do you have for the year ahead?
I think as a 28-year-old, I think personal level ma, professional level ma, I feel at a place where I'm like content. I feel comfortable. I feel confident. I know. So I think I want to enjoy this place as much as possible. It's been a long journey, right? We said like it's been like a 20-year-old journey to get to this space. So I think enjoying this as much as possible. And then, to be honest, like this might need a whole different podcast, but like truly what I'm seeking in life is freedom. But I guess like in one way, identity ko freedom चाहिँ मैले पाएँ to a certain level. I know now that I've explored it. I've reached a place where I feel comfortable. I know who I am. त्यो level को freedom. अब migration को एउटा purpose usually economic नै हुन्छ हैन हाम्रो parents migrate हुनु भएको नै ल बच्चाहरुलाई राम्रो education दिने, they'll get good jobs, so like obviously financial freedom, and that's one of the reasons I moved back as well, is like obviously financially the नेपालमा भन्दा UK मा नै I'll do better भनेर त्यो mindset लिएर पनि म फर्केको हो हैन. So financial freedom भइहाल्यो. So I think generally अनि अब once you start working, once you work within the capitalist system, you realize that you don't have time for freedom, right? I think I was lucky in the sense that I got to explore all of these things about like moko, मेरो identity के हो, ल नेपाल गएर म explore गर्छु भन्ने जुन time थियो, जुन freedom थियो, त्यो मैले अहिले पाउन सक्दिनँ, right? Because the work is so busy, working in a very fast-paced environment, like a lot of your brain space is taken there, हैन. टाइम भनेको पनि विकेन्ड्स हो, विकेन्ड्समा पनि अब एक दिन त रेस्ट गरेर नै जान्छ, अब अर्को दिन सोशलाइज गरेर जान्छ भने चाहिँ त्यो सोच्ने टाइम पनि पाउँदैन, आफ्नो पर्सनल प्रोजेक्ट्सहरू के गर्ने टाइम पनि पाउँदैन हैन. सो आई थिंक अल्टिमेटली what I'm seeking is freedom, identity wise, financially wise, time wise. I think that's what I'm looking for, and I don't know what's going to lead me to that place exactly, but that's the vision I have for myself, is like I want to eventually get to a place where I have control over everything in my life. On all levels, say I want to feel free. I don't know if this answer is a bit too deep and vague.
No, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think I'll just say it on air. I know that, we brought you here on the Action With podcast because, we wanted to talk about Taptap as being a podcast partner as well. Tara, on another note, I was really excited to be able to have this conversation with you because हामी कहिले पनि यस्तो तरिकाले त गफ गरेको छैन. तर I already felt seeing your kind of trajectory, UK मा पढेको थियो, and then Nepal you were working with interesting organizations and so on. So I was just like, oh my God, I wonder like, what's I knew your value system, or it's very it's something that I kind of like relate to as well. So that's why I was just like, okay, you know what, it's gonna be great to have this conversation with you. So I'm glad that we finally were able to make this time, and hopefully this podcast will be enjoyed by people who are listening at home as well. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest, Sristi.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. I mean, like, I was really nervous.
She was really nervous. That's why she kept laughing. I was just like, ooh.
And I think at points I definitely rambled, but like, yeah, I think this is definitely a new thing for me. Like, I've never been on set with like cameras and mics, and like,
well, hopefully it's the start of many, because there's so much for you to share as well, and I think now onwards as well, the quest to freedom भन्ने कुरा गरेको थियो हैन, त्यसमा पनि कति धेरै अनप्याक गर्न सकिन्छ हैन. And for us just to be able to have this conversation about wanting to be free, it's like almost speaks like, who are we? It's like we're so privileged to as well, hop across things, so we can always go off in another tangent. तर अहिलेको लागि हामी यही रोकौँ हैन. सबैजनालाई घरमा हेरिराख्नु भएको छ भने धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद, र सुनिराख्नु भएको छ भने धन्यवाद. हामीलाई leave us a 5-star rating. हजुरहरूले सुनिराख्नु भएको थियो Action With podcast, and this was with Sristi Gurung, presented by A-Star Financial Solutions UK, supported by New Laxmi Jewelers, Taptap Send, Nepali Music Festival UK, and Nepal Authentic Dining. Thank you so much.